The Assembly will hear an address by His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco. I request protocol to escort His Highness. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome to the United Nations His Serene Highness Prince Albert II of Monaco and to invite him to address the Assembly.
Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée générale.
Mr. President of the General Assembly, Secretary General, Heads of State and Government, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We would be very presumptuous or dangerously indifferent if we failed to fully appreciate the impact of the appeal that once again the youth of the world have issued with regard to the urgency of the climate situation, and if we failed to respond to it in a rapid, ambitious and effective manner. This youth, Professor Tijani Mohamed Bonde, you are very well aware of its importance. The African continent, which you honour by assuring the presidency of the 74th session of the UN General Assembly, is the only region of the world where the population under 24 continues to grow. This youth, which is animating movements throughout the world, quite rightly, is very worried about the future, but also they have immense hope, and that is what must move us towards genuine change. We have to translate these messages in our policy into a courageous and determined action. The Climate Action Summit, which you so brilliantly organized, Secretary General, with Luis Alfonso de Alba, made it possible to mobilize the creativity of all actors in society. For its part, the Principality is resolutely engaged in carbon neutrality by 2050, and we plan to provide the means to achieve this ambition. The Mission for Energy Transition, established in 2016, is redoubling its efforts in order to speed up the transition of various stakeholders towards a low-carbon operation. The National Pact for Energy Transition will enable everyone, private individuals and public and private enterprises and associations, to become actors and partners in the necessary developments that need to take place in our way of living. Only a proactive policy will make it possible to overcome the constraints that our country faces every day when we welcome double the size of our population. We must fight climate change and also air quality in order to preserve health in line with the commitments made in the Breathe Life Network coordinated by the WHO, the United Nations Environment and the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. Monaco also has joined the coalition of finance ministers for climate action in order to make progress towards the implementation of an economic and financial policy that is committed to global transition towards a low-carbon economy. Over and above the measures taken at national level, the Principality of Monaco aims to fully meet its responsibilities with regard to the collective goal of mobilizing $100 billion annually between now and 2025 in favor of climate action in developing countries. As part of this, the Principality will participate in the first reconstitution of the Green Fund for the Climate. Mr. President, Monaco has committed itself to the coalition of solutions based on nature in order to use the capital that we have in nature to bring about climate change. Climate change and the collapse of biodiversity are alarming symptoms of the Anthropocene, and we must reply to both of them in synergy. And since we share this conviction, the government of Monaco attaches the same degree of importance to the preservation of biodiversity as we do to fighting against climate change. As an example of this, Monaco, starting in 2020, will step up its international funding in order to preserve and regenerate biodiversity by reducing and favouring adaptation to climate change, as well as ensuring the resilience of vulnerable populations. The protection of forests and essential services is essential, particularly protection of carbon sinks. And that's why the recent devastating fires throughout the world are a genuine ecological disaster. It's also crucial that we preserve the seas and oceans as we know them today and benefit from the scientific knowledge that we have. They play an essential role in climate balance, but they're also very vulnerable when it comes to global warming. In this regard, the special report of the Intergovernmental Group of Experts on the Ocean and the Cryosphere in the context of climate change just concluded a meeting yesterday in Monaco, and the results are very revealing. It is up to us today to take on board these conclusions and the recommendations of very many scientists and translate them into the political decisions that we take next year in the area of climate change, of conservation and the sustainable development of the oceans and biological diversity. Monaco historically has chosen to support science. Indeed, it is essential that policies are based on the most reliable scientific knowledge. Secretary General, our commitment alongside you shows our support for your leadership and our recognition of your unfailing attachment to the multilateralism which is embodied by the United Nations. Nevertheless, international institutions and international civil servants, as devoted as they may be, cannot be held responsible for our inaction or our failure. Mr. President, we are aware of the numerous challenges that we face, and we know very well that we can only deal with them together, or we will lose the battle individually. Our common future must include the sustainable development by 2030. The SDG Summit that we're launching today is announcing a decade of ambitious actions, 10 priority areas around which we must concentrate our efforts. The Global Report on Sustainable Development talks about tipping points or critical points of certain ecosystems, and this signifies that we are achieving a level of degradation where it will not be possible to return to normal functioning. Also, the report of the Secretary General and the report of the group of independent experts mandated by member states with regard to the first cycle of the SDGs shows that progress has been made in certain key areas and that favourable developments can be seen, particularly with regard to the reduction in extreme poverty and also a drop in the mortality of children under 5. However, despite this, the report calls upon us to redouble our efforts. As a matter of urgency, the natural environment is being degraded at an alarming speed. The oceans, the acidification of the oceans is speeding up. We've seen very many plant and species, animal species that are threatened, and very many people suffering from hunger. That number continues to go up. More than half the global population is still deprived of essential services, and still too many children do not have the level that they require in reading and mathematics. That is why the guideline that I gave to my government in 2005 is a combination of a world turned towards progress and well-being and the implementation of activities to protect the environment, fight for peace, respect justice, sustainable development, to defend those that are defavorized, and to work for a more harmonious world. Therefore, each part of the government's policy must take into account sustainable development. Economic progress must be to the benefit of social progress whilst always respecting the environment. This transition towards a more sustainable way of life cannot happen without an inclusive society that is a source of fulfillment for individuals. And here, women and girls must not be sidelined in this movement, particularly as we are celebrating the 25th anniversary of the Beijing Programme of Action and Declaration. And in order to reaffirm our commitment to the rights and interests of women, last October we organized a committee for the promotion and protection of women's rights. In today's world, women, mothers, girls, and we deplore this, are the first victims of wars and conflicts which we continue to see. They are particularly vulnerable as well with regard to forced displacement of populations. Mr. President, the fourth industrial revolution is upon us. Artificial intelligence brings a lot of hope, but also a lot of risks that we need to understand globally. The digital revolution returns us to a creative destruction which is not linear or predetermined. We have the keys to control this, and we must determine the path to follow. We must seize the opportunities of the present, but we must also protect against uncontrolled development of our societies, particularly with regard to a worsening of inequality. The speed and breadth and scope of the transformations that have already occurred should lead us to lay the basis for working together. In the light of this challenge, we have set a technical turning point in digital transformation. This is an economic necessity, and if we are to honour our commitments in the area of sustainable development, the launching of Extended Monaco last April engages the Principality on the path of a digital transition of an unequalled size, while paying particular attention to the notions of responsibility and sustainability. Thus, as part of our digital transition strategy, the government plans to deploy technological innovations in the area of health, education, the economy, but also in order to make Monaco a model when it comes to intelligent villages. In an interconnected world, we must fully understand the importance of good neighbourliness that is mentioned in the United Nations Charter. And I quote, "Nations large and small must have access to this." This is the path that we should follow in a world where we have not only all become each other's neighbours, but also where the notions of time and space have become less important. Our multilateral institutions must overcome antagonisms and help manage our interdependence. The sovereignty of each of our states will be reinforced through this process. Mr. President, as we stand before you, we're launching the countdown to the 75th anniversary of the United Nations in 2020. This body has been, this hall has been witness to so many debates, confrontations, promises, progress, but also a lot of dashed dreams. But we are still here, as we were when we adopted the United Nations Charter, when we decided to pool our efforts in order to achieve the following goals: to preserve future generations from the scourge of war, to reaffirm our faith in the dignity and worth of the human person, and to promote better standards of life in larger freedom. Over these last 3 decades, here in this General Assembly Hall, we have certainly followed a path strewn with many obstacles, but nevertheless we have made important leaps forward. We've adopted, amended, and corrected a number of texts, created mechanisms and processes, as well as structures in order to address new challenges. From disarmament to human rights, the preservation of the environment, dealing with the great pandemics, fighting terrorism, and promoting social development, our force has always been in our unity and in our capacity to accept compromise in the light of the superior interest of the peoples for whom this organization was founded. The changes of paradigm in funding that are required are beyond each member state, but is not impossible if we show solidarity in the service of humanity. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you for your attention.
Au nom de l'Assemblée générale, je tiens.
On behalf of the General Assembly, I would like to thank His Excellency, His Serene Highness Prince Albert of Monaco. I would ask the other delegations to remain seated while we escort His Excellency.